Um, because I've watched some of the ones on Facebook so far, and so many faces that maybe weren't in 520, and even units that were separated during deployment. And so for some faces I didn't know. So a lot of faces I have known, but I'm Harry Cromer. I'm from a little small town in South Carolina, Newberry, South Carolina, which is almost smack dab in the middle of the state. Would be known as probably a suburb in most big cities to Columbia. Um, and you know, uh, my dad's has a small business. My mom grew up as a school teacher. Ended up, oddly enough, going to the Citadel. Didn't apply to anywhere else. A lot of folks may know what that is. Some may not, but did not go to the Citadel at all for military. Although it is a military school. Uh,
I didn't know you could do that.
yeah, yeah. You actually, unlike some of the academies, you aren't obligated to go in. At the time, I want to say maybe 20 to 25, maybe 30% went in, and then 9/11. So my story, I went and graduated high school in 2000. So my first year at the Citadel, I think I'm pretty sure I remember being a knob. Maybe I was a sophomore. That's how bad some of my memory is. But 9/11 happened. So everyone at the Citadel has to take an ROTC class, but you're not obligated to go into the military. And I had already kind of been, I was in Army ROTC. And, just it was kind of a multitude of factors. My parents have sacrificed a lot growing up to give us a great life and to really kind of have what we wanted in sports and do what we wanted. Coming from a pretty, middle, class family. And, they hadn't saved up a bunch of money for school. And so I just kind of felt a little calling to take some of that on myself. So when 9/11 happened, I was already thinking about it. And then 9/11 happened, and it was just like, all right, this is meant to be. So I ended up getting like a 3-year scholarship where the Army covered some of my schooling, and was obligated to the Army at that point, and was ready to go kill bad guys and do things. My younger days, really all I've ever wanted to do from the time I started Army was infantry. And a lot of places, like the folks that have the worst grades and that kind of thing, where you got infantry, but there was a lot of us at the Civil at that time that was our first choice. That's what we wanted to do, and I'm sure they were obliged to give it to us as our choice once you pick your branch.
Yeah, I mean, that really speaks of your character because you had 9/11. So, we're going to war and you still go become an Army officer and go infantry.
Yeah, when you're young and you don't understand. I remember having the Sergeant First Class Pye was our he's deceased now, but he was a great guy. He had a CIB, and a lot of folks. We had a Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel McMillan, I believe was his name. Special Forces, all decked out, CIB, scuba, just everything. And you know, some of the guys were like always hardcore, but he was so chill. Like his personality was like, so you don't have to be like a complete crazy wire-headed dude to want to go and do this. And my time in the Army was some of the best, minus some bad experiences and memories, but was just the people and the guys, people coming from nothing, people coming from a lot, all in one big melting pot. Doing just trying to be there for each other. That those were some of the best times of my life so far.
I could not agree with you more. I always joke and say if I was the president or king for the day, mandatory service is just because of what you just said. The melting pot, common goal. You take everybody from every SES and now look.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so my time at the Civil was great. Kind of knew what I was getting into. I guess kind of knew. I'll joke, and this might be jumping way ahead, but I was never. I would always felt behind on like the Army knowledge as an officer, like order planning, but I felt like I was always good with people. And so, what a lot of other officers knew so much more stuff, but I was just like, hey, at the end of the day, it's just people. If we can work together and build a team, hopefully we'll be okay.
That's great advice. Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
At no point is somebody going to ask what happened at this hill 1975. It's just about people.
Yeah. And, I think I ended up going to airborne school as a cadet, which that was a great experience. Several of us Army guys got to go to airborne school at Benning as a cadet, got to wear my, airborne wings on my uniform for a year and a half or so. Graduated, ended up getting branched to infantry, and I got to live in Charleston, graduated, getting paid some money by the Army for like 4 months after graduation until I had to report. So I had some great months post graduation in Charleston, South Carolina, just getting in shape and having fun.
Get those LT dollars.
Yeah.
All right. So now you go to Benning.
Yeah, just nothing much more than that everybody knows besides jumping into a infantry officer basic course. Was a winter ranger, finished that, went to ranger school. I ended up being a winter ranger. That was awful. I got lucky enough. I did not have to cycle. I don't know how those guys that had to recycle did it. I don't know that I was that mentally tough. But went through, and funny story, I'm going to skip through all that because none of that stuff's really interesting. But as all the officers were there, and like, I don't know what you would call it, but like you're not in school anymore. Maybe you're transitioning between different specialty schools. There's a place where all the officers had to live, and there was still some accountability. You say, formations and things where you would check in, but you really weren't doing anything. So you had a lot of free time. Well, a lot of the folks were like, they're not checking on anybody. So a bunch of folks took off and went on a cruise.
Now that's good.
And so I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm always been a rule follower, right? But I was like, all these folks been going on cruises, coming back. Well, anyway, I got talked into doing it with a bunch of other folks. And by the time we got off the cruise, my cell phone, this was like right at cell phones, like, our messages out the wazoo, like, you better get back. They're locking down, And anyway, some of us got in a little bit of trouble, and, we had been good folks, and basically they were very lenient towards us. And they said, here are your orders, get out of here.
That's one way to see.
So looking back, I don't remember. I just remember I was so scared. Because I was always been a rule follower. I never did anything like that. But so, yeah, the one time I do, that's what I'll tell my kids these days. Anyway, that's how I ended up. I think I was going to be at Fort Stewart. And Phil Snyder, a platoon leader in 520, he was already out there. He was with the MGS platoon. he was like, hey man, if I can get you out here, would you want to come out here? And I think somehow they were able to, like, I don't want to say recruit me, but maybe I was going out that way at that time to Fort Lewis, and they were able to pull me in to 520. And I ended up somewhere where I had a familiar face, and, my only experiences with 520 and just a lot of great people.
That's awesome. I mean, normally when you screw up, you end up like in Korea. So you get in trouble. You got a friend.
I don't think the in trouble ever got on paper, but I'll admit, yes, I got in trouble.
And you end up at Fort Lewis. It sounds like you're winning.
Yeah. Yeah. Winning. And by the way, I loved my time out there. I really haven't been back to Fort Lewis area or Washington since I left in 2007-ish, 2008. And I want to make it back, but
Gotta go.
yeah, I don't know. So another story about that is I get out there, my mom drives out there with me, and my sister is pregnant with twins, and I don't have anywhere to stay. I haven't been processed in. I think it was the first night we got to Washington. I checked into like an extended stay place off of I-5, and my sister calls, and she's going into labor. And my mom's like, I got to go. You got to take me back to SeaTac. And I was like, you can't leave me. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So looking back how, I'd had a little bit of life experience with all that, but still how immature I was. I'd never had an apartment by myself because I was at the Citadel. I'd never done a lot of things. But, get processed into 520. And before you know it, we're not too much longer. We're in pre-deployment.
Yeah, walk us through pre-deployment. What does that look like for you?
Did I get out there in... guess it might have been late winter or early spring 2005. I believe that's right. And, I was, so my entire time in 520, I was a platoon. I take that back. I was S1 when I got hurt, but I was a platoon leader. From day I got there, 2nd Platoon, BCO 520. Sergeant Stowe was my platoon sergeant from the day I got there to the to the day I left Iraq with my injury. But just going from EIB testing to pre-deployment to Yakima, I mean, it was just, looking back, it was just I was just trying to keep up. Like, maybe back in the day, I actually knew a little bit more about what I was doing, but looking back 20 years later, it was just like a fog. I was just trying to keep up and keep moving and trying to do the right thing.
Keep your head above water, keep going in the right direction. But I really think it's part of the grand plan of the Army. So pre-deployment, keep you guessing, keep you running. And once you get into theater, it kind of kept going.
Yeah. Yeah. The just the bonding experiences between PT and EIB was a great experience. I remember all that. And Yakima trips. I mean, looking back on Yakima, I mean, just
Stopping at Bullfrog and yeah.
Oh yeah, just the fun, cold and sometimes wet, but still able to like joke and have a good time. And I think that's where the bonding experiences between the whole platoon, as far as on the platoon level, happened. I mean, just I stay in touch with a lot of the soldiers and NCOs and everything, even today. But one of them is Alex Horton. I mean, I don't stay in touch with him like super close, but I don't know if you recognize that name. But he was well, he came in, I guess, as a private, but got out. I'm not sure what he actually got out of the Army as, but he's now like a great writer, like a unbelievable talented writer. And at one time did a lot of writing for, the Army and that type of thing. Yeah.
But that's awesome. That speaks a lot. Once again, to go back to your character, that after 20 years, you're still talking with these soldiers and your NCOs.
Yeah, and obviously life's busy. I wish I stayed in touch with more of them than I could, especially kind of separating, the Army structure and that type of thing. Um, but what they always gave me a hard time. Like my hair was always pushing the limit of standards. And that, the first sergeant and stuff were always on me. I was like, this hair is standard. Nobody said I had to have a high and tight. This is this is to the standards.
Love that. There you are, rage of time. Dude, what are you doing?
But we had a great time. I mean, the NCOs, the soldiers, everyone's taught me so much. And I think that's part of the experience. And I think I had I heard all these stories about PCSing and losing people and losing continuity. And I think Matt James, who did one recently with Jim, spoke to this. And I did not realize that was like big Army picture. I just thought we got lucky. But we were able to keep a lot of the experience and NCOs that had deployed previously before I showed up. And so everyone that was new had that experience and was able to learn, and I feel like no one was shy about asking questions. And, when people's lives are on the line, there's no, there's, yeah, I'm definitely willing to listen if someone has more experience than me.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you're saying that, because unfortunately, we know the officers on the other, and not just officers, but we know those on the other end of the spectrum that not going to ask or not listen or just come in with that I know everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I believe we were ingrained and drilled in our head to kind of be the opposite. And it's easy when you got good people too. So, but I train up. I don't remember all the specifics and everything, but a train up is a train up. You go and do things, you practice things, you get proficient at it, and back to the kind of personal side. I was at the time not married. Started dating my now wife, and during, I believe it was block leave prior to deployment, we get married. And the first year of marriage, we're apart. And she moves back to South Carolina and live, 3 houses down from my parents, So had help, was surrounded by, a network. But that was the deployment. I remember feeling the rock in my throat. I was leaving. I had an apartment in DuPont. So were you ever out, in that area? So you know the areas that I'm talking about?
Later on, 2016 to 2019, and then I actually commanded in the HIMARS brigade.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. So I had an apartment in DuPont. My parents were out there to see us off at deployment, and I think we must have been coming down my parents' hotel elevator, because I remember an elevator. But I just remember they were going to drop me off, like to get on the plane.
Yeah.
And they were driving from Washington back to South Carolina, all three of them, my parents and my wife. And I just remember that knot in my throat, because I'm really close with my parents, just married, and just the unknown. You know, you're about to go through an experience where you just don't know anything of what to expect. And that was a hard time, but I guess what I'm trying to say is during that time, I grew up, and I think we all that went through anything like that grew up very quick.
And that is very true. It's tough to. How do you explain you pack your life into 2 or 3 duffel bags, kiss your loved ones potentially bye or goodbye, and you get on a plane?
Yeah. Yeah, and I wasn't even, well, I was married then, but I didn't have kids. I just looking back, I don't know how those guys did it. Yeah, that would have been a total different level looking back, doing that. And so, you know, I didn't have it hard. I was just saying bye to my parents and wife, but you know, those that had kids or a family, I mean, it's totally different level.
Yeah, that the deployment day is probably one of the most depressing days in your career.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, let's to make the movie about the coming home, which is joyous, but the leaving isn't as glorious or looks like maybe what they try to make it look like. It's a lot of just tears and, like you said, how can kids and still just go?
Yeah. 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 It's, that definitely was a tough time. Um, and so yeah, we leave. Um, I don't know where I guess we go into Kuwait. We flew into Kuwait, kind of did our little prep thing. Um, God, I remember it being so hot.
Yeah.
I mean, just the humidity, like the heat, even at night in the pitch black dark, was just like I'm in South Carolina. It can get hot and humid here, but I just remember the calling cards, like the prepaid, like cards to call, the heat. But you know, besides that, hanging out with the guys, just not having any responsibility besides getting prepared. You know, there's a fun side of it too. You know, when I say no responsibility, I mean it's a lot of responsibility, but like you're doing the job that you're already prepared to be doing.
Life gets simple and also very complicated.
Yes. Yes. And you know, I don't know if it's Big Army's strategy of how 520's deployment unfolded or if it was just random happenings and circumstance, but I feel like it couldn't have happened in a better way, you know, as far as where we went and the order in which we went.
Yeah, because you're talking about the whole 520 basically being Kiara. You guys went from Kuwait up to Mosul, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Baghdad via Camp Taji.
Yeah.
And then eventually, as the surge continues, you come to Baqubah.
Yeah. I always remember it's like a backwards check mark. So it's like but you know, and so Mosul in a way was really fun because you're talking dedicated battle space. Yeah, we got shot at. We had some small IEDs, which at the time we thought were like, you know, amazing. Comes out to find out those were like nothing. Yeah, we took rounds and did some things, but Mosul was like a warm up. Mosul was like a real live fire warm up with stuff. And I look back and some of the stuff we did in Mosul, though, the SKT teams, I don't know if that's a TTP that like we kind of did or if it was already out there, but we would like go and flood those areas with like showing our presence. And then when we withdrew, we would leave a team there to overlook and really caught some IED folks and some other stuff like that doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. But yeah, Mosul was really a warm up. I went on leave, and when I come back on leave, we went from Mosul to Baghdad. So that's like my personal story. I didn't do the travel down. I come back and they're sending me somewhere else. So I missed the whole transition down. But you know, we're going from air conditioning and heated living quarters, lifting weights, eating like kings. Guys were playing Xbox and Halo, and in between missions to like now we're living out of our vehicles and we have no home. So you can kind of see that morale, you know, was changed a little bit. And
Yeah. ANCO, he always made this joke, and now I laugh, but it's like, dude, it's kind of messed up. He said, the Army trains you to be homeless.
yeah,
You got your bag. If you got a vehicle, you're lucky. And you just go.
yeah. You know, the longer you get away from that, the softer you get, I feel like. But there's still some of that in you that if you gotta make it happen, you just make it happen.
Yeah, because like what I've gotten from other people, and maybe you remember or just jogging your memory, you're at Taji, but you're driving down to Baghdad. So that's like what, 45 minutes, an hour, doing operations, staying out, maybe coming home. But yeah, that's a tough life.
Yeah, we start as I remember. I don't know if it's just Biko, but we started working out of Taiji. But by the time we got into it, we were basically living at different fobs down there. I don't remember all the names, Falcon and
Oh, okay.
taking mortar rounds at these pieces of you know what in the hole, you know, just living on cots or living out of the vehicles, being on standby. You know, my biggest memory from all that time, really quick, was Christmas Day. There was a bunch of EFP stuff going on. Some guys took some sniper rounds that went through the helmet but did not hit their head. Christmas Day, there were some riots out there that our company dealt with, and I was like, it's Christmas Day, and was dealing with this bullshit over here. And then we were QRF somewhere, and there was a Blackwater incident, January 23rd, and my platoon was on red. I don't even remember what you call it. Code red, QRF, whatever. Ramps were down. We get a call, said a Blackwater helicopter was shot down outside the green zone. They give us a grid. We're driving. There's no smoke. There's no fire, nothing. And we turn a corner, and I just remember seeing like, I can't remember, it was 3 or 4 Caucasian bodies, but they were lined up on the road. And looking back, there were people standing over them and scattered, you know, and looking back, if I would have known, maybe we would have acted differently, but it's like we didn't. And it happened so fast. We turn and they scatter like flies. And it ended up being that the Blackwater helicopter got shot down and it crashed like in this building in the middle of Baghdad. And no smoke, no sign of nothing. but we traced it back, and I think it ended up being that the guys survived the crash but had a shootout and ended up getting overrun, and thinking were setting up an ambush for who came to recover. And as we, cleared the scene and handled stuff, as we were pulling out, huge firefight broke out, like right across the street in like downtown Baghdad, and lasted for a while. But that was our first real lots of rounds flying everywhere. And I remember my weapon squad was up on a roof, and I assume it was a disc or something, but just completely obliterated this brick wall that they were using for cover. And I was up there, and a tracer round flew by and ricocheted, and it spun next to me. Like it was spinning like a cap. And I was like, we probably need to get down from here. This is probably, this is not a good place to be right now. But just all that, and how, loud it was. I mean, the movies and the stuff just you don't understand. We've got that type of 50 cals and Mark 19s and 3 or 4 squads or more of firearms going off in an echoey type of town environment. It is loud, and communication is almost impossible. But that was our first real experience. And I want to say, what was that, late January? By March, we are, is it March when the Strykers went to Warhorse?
Yep.
Yeah. So we get the notification to go to Warhorse.
If you don't mind, let's back up just for a couple things. So you brought up something that others haven't brought up. The human aspect that it's Christmas, you're separated from your family, you're going through life or death, but yet everyone at home is still living life.
Yeah.
Just, the mentality of that, or the thoughts there.
Yeah, so I really wish I was more, and maybe as time goes on, I'll try to be more of a student historian of all these events. But I want to say that about that time is when, the president was kind of advertising the surge. Maybe it was starting to be talked about in the States. And, that we were right in the middle of that. Of that process, and thinking through birthdays or anniversary or Christmas or Easter, and thinking about traditions, and I bet my parents are over at my aunt and uncle's house, or what's going on, that kind of, I think maybe different personalities, different, but it kind of brings you a little bit of comfort or peace there, but also kind of brings you a little bit of sadness as well.
Yeah. It does, and also can bring you closer to your comrades. But
yeah,
which kind of leads us into the next thing, and as you were talking about the surge, January, you went from JV team to now varsity, the varsity enemy Al-Qaeda.
Yeah. As far as from Baghdad to Warhorse, or for just Mosul to Baghdad?
Well, Mosul to Baghdad, and then now you jump into Baqubah, and you can almost say that was D1.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many, and I wish I could remember the stories between all of the stuff in Baghdad. That was a complete show, because you're dealing with so many different, but Baqubah was a different area. And I just remember, like, I guess the NCOs and the platoon sergeants and the officers kind of getting that briefing of, this is where we're going, prepare prepare troops for movement and this kind of thing. And, they're telling us how awful it is. I'm sure they told us like who was there and how outnumbered they were being in the Bradley fighting vehicles and, didn't have enough boots on the ground. But I just remember them saying that this was a bad place and that our mission or our plan, I don't remember if they already knew this going there or if we got this once we got on site at Warhorse. But I just remember we're going to go out and we're going to drive the roads in a presence patrol. And I don't remember if they used that term or if I just knew that's kind of what it was. We're going to go out there and make our presence known that we're here. And I'm like, this is the worst place that y'all are saying is around right now. They're probably embedded and you want us to go drive around the roads? Like, it already was clicking in my head then. And I think I did say something that I shouldn't have said and maybe got reprimanded. But I was like, knowing what we had known to that point, I sure wish we could have, I don't know that walking the roads would have been any safer. But by the time we finished Baqubah, I would guarantee you everyone that was out there would have much rather gone house to house than driving a vehicle.
Yeah. As someone who was doing the intelligence briefs to 520 and others coming to town, just a cliff note was these IEDs are ripping tanks in half. And I just remember the conversation or the debate about, well, the Stryker and we're more maneuverable, but it's like the IEDs are ripping tanks in half.
Yeah.
Turrets are coming out. Like, just let that set in. So, hindsight, yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's got TTPs, everybody's got their way of doing things. But, as you said, you'd probably rather been dismounted, walk, bring the vehicles up as you clear.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, our first, I have not talked about this much at all. Kind of the next part that we will go into. So I really don't know how I will handle it. But the next part changed everything. We had been shot at, we had been taking IEDs, we had been hit, we had done that, but it had been nothing too serious yet. And serious relative to what unfolded. But the first mission, and I could be wrong, but I would be willing to say it was the first 30 minutes, maybe the first 15 minutes. And I don't remember all the routes, but we get off one of the main roads. Our job was to, do this area. I'm normally the first vehicle. But we turn off on the road. I think it was us. We got hit with a little small IED blast. First seconds off the main road. So they're already there waiting. I'm sure they're like in place waiting, And I get diverted and a vehicle goes around me, which was first squad. And so they take the lead. And I remember us taking a turn down these roads that parallel, and we're driving and we come up to a school. And I don't remember what was going on the radio or whatever. I just remember kind of like slow motion, looking over to my right. Or maybe they were talking about on the radio real quick. Somebody said, those kids are covering their ears. And so I just remember turning my head to the right and I see kids doing this.
Wow.
And next thing I know, the vehicle in front of me is completely blown up in the air. And that was our first loss. The driver, Brian Chevalier, I just remember, he was blown from the hatch. I remember seeing them fly through the air, and it was a complex attack to where the vehicle kind of was blown up and kind of on its side. And I just remember, shooting started. I think there were some RPGs they shot at us, and I think the blast. I could be wrong. This is just what I remember, and I don't talk about it a lot or go back, but I just remember I think the blast killed some of the kids in the playground area where they were playing. And so just the sickness that we were dealing with, where they would plant that in front of the school on purpose, to have that attack there. I would assume, thinking, that maybe you'd have your guard down in front of a school, or maybe that was just a good intersection. I believe going back, it was in a culvert that was no way you could see it was a culvert. It was covered, in trash and just, how it is over there. But just a massive, massive hole. And that's really our first mission, the first 30 minutes. It was game on, and that changed the course of that deployment in Warhorse. As I remember, I think we had some time to go back and grieve and get the guys, ready, but we didn't have much time. And it was from there, it was game on. It was go out, and we were on the offensive from that point forward. It was, there's the Palm Groves mission where it was like Vietnam type tactics. It was a pretty big palm grove, but it was missions after go. It was go, 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 go.
And the human toll, I mean, like you described, you go from hero fry, memorial, straight back at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the kind of big picture was you had first cav, combat outposts, you guys were clearing because the previous clear and you can't hold, the enemy just comes back.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're all working together, but we're facing an enemy that wants to fight.
Yeah.
It's no longer the farmers. It's no longer the poorly trained. These are the foreign fighters,
Yeah.
Al Qaeda.
Yeah, I remember finding stuff in houses that referred to Al Qaeda and even Osama bin Laden. And that was, that to me then gave me actually more peace. All right, we're not just chasing hillbillies here. If we're gonna do it, let's go after and let's find some dudes. And again, like I wasn't one of those who thought 2 and 3 levels higher than me and was trying at the time to figure out the grand picture of this. I was just doing what I was told and tried to do it the best I could to keep people safe. And so, going back to the history of it, I want to go back and really understand, how all that unfolded and what we were being told, how we were used, and that type of thing. But it was a real enemy, and the enemy needed to be eliminated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to do a disjustice or an injustice by not getting it right, and I want to go into a huge thesis statement here. But the quick picture, the surge pushing all the foreign fighters, this was their last stand.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you probably have some stories, you may remember this. The sectarian violence, so you had Al Qaeda attacking the Shias, then the Shias attacking the Sunnis, and then some of the torture houses that were being found, and just that craziness.
Mm-hmm.
But this was basically all the foreign fighters of Iraq were pushed into this AO. and it was their animal.
Hmm. Yeah. So guys, so uh, I don't want my ADD to kick in, but I remember, and from talking to other people, you may remember some of this, but I remember guys that we were fighting against 2 weeks ago. Somehow they made alliance with, and they brought them in, and they started fighting with us. The 19 something.
There's a couple different names. I think one was called like the Sunni Awakening. But yes, remember they got their road guard vests?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And so we're talking about people that maybe a couple weeks before were setting IEDs and shooting at us. Now they have a firearm and they're amongst the ranks with us, showing us where people supposedly are and places not to go, and relying on interpreters to communicate this. And so you're talking about just a crazy, crazy time. Um, we're going from house to house type tactics to then the next week we're practicing formations, Vietnam type spread formations of putting foliage in our helmets and camouflaging in the orange orchards and the palm groves. I mean, I'm kind of excited to experience that in my life, but at the same time, just a wild, like it's hard to open up and just like I know a lot of my friends, want me to tell them stories and talk about and I just don't much just because you can't really. I'm not saying they won't understand, but it's just it's a different level to be able to open up on some of those experiences.
And you don't want to not do the story justice.
Yeah.
And it's also hard to share. I mean, the loss, just sometimes the smell,
Hmm.
the tired.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about the palm groves. So not only is it hot, now it's humid. You're fighting the bushes. Oh, by the way, there's some fighters in there. Oh, there's some booby traps. And you're debating if this IED backpack is going to give you cancer
Yeah.
because someone's carrying that thing around.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting intel of snipers in the palm groves and to me the IEDs were terrifying, but you really didn't know. I mean, you had to drive around them. So it's not like you could just not go on the road. So at some point you just had to move on and say, if I'm going to get hit, I'm going to get hit. Hopefully it's not bad. Um, but the snipers were what kept me up at night, not only for myself, but for my unit. Like, how can we efficiently and effectively get from point A to point B without being exposed? Because that to me just was, you know, awful. And, Captain Drew Jensen, um, he was hit. That, probably, I guess not long after maybe our first. So Bico, second platoon, my platoon, 520, I think was the first one to be hit or engaged with Brian Chevalier with that loss. But shortly after that, it spread across the whole Baqubah. And so, they're responding to our loss. While they're responding to our loss, I think other folks are hit in during the movement. And, so it went from my story and my experience to spreading drastically very quickly across the whole entire Baqubah area.
Yeah, the hornet's nest got picked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah. But
hopefully, sharing, talking in this format gives you a chance to share with others or for others that want to hear your story. At least this is like a start.
yeah. Yeah. You go from I think the next kind of threat, and I really almost Um, you know, it's awful that I don't remember who exactly it was, but those that were there and the pace in which we were going, I think can show me some grace, because of the type of information we were and the pace in which we were going. But the first house-borne IED that we saw, we were following wires. We were finding, and I'll go into that later. Remind me if I don't go into the IED that we started to find.
Okay.
But I was about to walk through this courtyard, and I think I have pictures somewhere, but it's like a bunch of tumbleweed, like a really just crappy Iraqi yard, when you walk through the gate. And around the tumbleweed are two sheets of tin,
Mm.
and you do see wire, and you do see some like propane tanks. But in the house, well, it was just like a really nice house. It was empty and abandoned, but you're talking about like glass with the ironwork, with the really nice doors, were like 10 55-gallon drums in the house. And so that was two pieces of metal. When you stepped on that metal, touched the wire, the house would have blown. And I mean, it had to have been 8 to 10 55-gallon drums in there. So that was the first one I think of anybody finding, which I think were all throughout Baqubah. We ended up backing off and calling a jet to drop might have been a JDAM. I don't know what I was talking to. I was talking to a fixed wing asset and dropped it right on the house, and just the explosion that the thing created. But they weren't playing around at that time. They started to get rid of some of those threats.
I mean, just the fact that you found it is a blessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the once we started finding so many IEDs, and hopefully y'all interview some of the EOD guys, which were a blessing and just, so good at what they did. But we started to find so many that there was no way that we could sit there and wait. So they started to train us on what to do. So I have guys walking around with C4 strapped to their vest, blocks of C4, and we would find so many wires going down to a disturbed earth or follow it back to a battery. I mean, we were literally disposing of these IEDs ourselves by time detonators, dropping a block of C4 on it, and just thinking back on that. I mean, just stuff, just nuts type of stuff. I had Mike Marker. He was like he was one of my squad leaders, but he was great, and he was our pyro guy. I mean, he would walk around with like probably bandoliers of C4 strapped to him and dropping the.
Well, I'm going to be talking with Mike in January, so I'll have to
Oh yeah,
think about this.
yeah. He was our pyro guy.
But yeah, but like you were saying, the change of TTT, because previously or previous deployments, EOD used to get mad at that. Like, no, you don't shoot it, we'll deal with it. But like you were talking about, the up-tempo, the sheer volume of IEDs, it was like, how do we become force multipliers? Let's teach them about some C4, tell the tankers where to shoot, and reduce it yourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember one of them, it was definitely in Baqubah. I don't remember. Maybe it was Barrett's. I don't remember what area it was, but we placed it on the road and, backed off a lot. And when that thing blew, I mean, I think the asphalt blew on top of another house a long ways away. But when we got in that hole, I mean, that hole could have fit 2 Volkswagens. I mean, it was a big, big hole.
I think I remember that picture. of course, circulated around.
2 guys in the hole.
2 guys, and I thought there was like a striker somewhere nearby, but you just look at him like, that's a lot of explosives.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just became normal. Hey, we found the wire, we found a battery, positive it's an IED. Let's blow it up. And eliminate something. But yeah,
So this is going on, as you're talking about, the up tempo. Finally, the powers to be realize this is not a 2 battalion job. So the powers to be decide, let's bring in all 32. Arrowhead Ripper. John Stewart's little clip. Maybe I should insert that. Were you there for Arrowhead Ripper?
so I was not. So my entire time in the Army, at a unit, I was a platoon leader. We had some cycles, some guys move out. I think Sean McCaffrey may have been one of the first folks to talk. He was a PL with me. Tim Price, who I believe is now 06 Colonel Tim Price, was another platoon leader. Phil Schneider, I talked about. So those were the guys that were initially there during train up. Now we had turnover once we got in country and some people left and stuff. But at some point, I don't even remember what month it was. It was after the extension order. I don't remember when that was, but I was on a kind of a QRF call. One of another platoon they had taken a round. A couple of guys maybe had taken a round in the shoulder or leg, and we were responding. And the area, not to talk Army talk, but it was kind of a fatal funnel. It was like a whole wall of walls, and there was rounds going everywhere in there. And I guess we couldn't drive. There was something about we couldn't drive, so we had to hop these walls seemed like forever to get to where those guys were and to kind of secure it and help get those guys out and exfil them. And it was the last wall that I jumped to get there. I tore my ACL. So I jumped the wall, and I just knew at the time when I landed, it wasn't good. And so they ended up having to get me out along with the other folks because I could hardly put any weight on my knee. And at first, I didn't know if it was serious, so I stayed in country on crutches for probably several weeks. And then they sent me, I don't even remember, but they sent me somewhere, confirmed that it was my ACL, MCL, and both meniscus, and that I wasn't going to be, doing operations again without a surgery. And so I think I ended up being sent back to Germany and then back home for surgery. So it was June to June. Maybe, I don't remember when I came back, but I came back, I want to say days or maybe weeks prior to Airhead Ripper. And they were struggling at that time because they lost me. I think some other guys maybe got, I don't know if it was relieved or changed. And, they were putting captains in PL spots, senior captains. They needed good leaders because they knew what was about to happen.
You got basically a operation that went from 2 battalions to 2 brigades and the clearing of Baqubah for good.
Yeah.
So to fast forward, I guess, a little bit, in your recovery, and you get tasked with putting together the welcome home ball.
How did you know that?
I have my sources, but Jim, I told you, he said you're an outstanding guy. a true pleasure to talk to. And you went through like your little resume, and then he finished off with, make sure to ask him about the return home ball, because he did amazing.
Well, I don't know, but yeah. So I guess that was post surgery. I'm back on the what do you call that
Rudy?
rear D, staff waiting. You're preparing. Um, I don't know if I got tasked to be the S1 then or when everybody got back, but let me just tell you, I was the worst S1 ever. That is not my skill set, and I did not need to be S1.
I think we should give the world some context. In a infantry battalion, or most maneuver battalions, the S1 is just a tasked captain or lieutenant of that branch. So here you are, infantry guy, who probably did not do any HR or business stuff or business training, gets told you're the S1.
Yeah, with all the awards and of a pre of a it was awful. And Kevin Hutchinson, who's a good friend of mine, he was awesome. He was so organized. He deserves all the credit. He was a good S1. I was not. But yeah, the return home ball, golly, that's such a blur. But we put that together, had cool little pint glasses for everybody to have, and I've seen a lot of those floating around. People still have them. Uh, um, and it was just a good time to celebrate. Remember those that didn't come back. Um, I feel like there's so many names. My platoon sergeant Mick Stowe was with me the entire deployment. Mike Marker was with us the entire train up and deployment. I mean, Mick was the entire train up and deployment also. Almost all of our folks, squad leaders, were almost with us the entire time. And a Chevy, Brian Chevalier, was kind of our only direct loss. But Jesse Williams was in our platoon most of the time, and he was killed over there, also by a sniper. But he was tasked to another platoon, and Drew Jensen, a name, he was an officer, and once I got back, Rich Cliff, I don't know if you remember that name, but he was in the unit and he went SF, and he was then killed in Afghanistan soon after I got out of the Army. And so just a lot of, good times, close people. And that's just my experience. 520 had a lot of loss along with 123 and, everybody. But just the people, my soldiers, my squad leaders, Mick Stowe, the other PLs, Matt James, Anthony Gore, who took over as the company commander, just good people. And to deal with people at a time when emotions are high, stress is high, rest sometimes is low, um, those are really interesting dynamics to manage and try to lead people. And I think empathy that you need to have. I mean, you got to have some hard-nosedness to you and not deal with some BS. But you've also got to be understanding and have some empathy and a little bit of grace with folks with what they're dealing with. And I feel like when you've gone through a combat deployment, I think most people get that. That's not something that you have to teach or educate. I think everyone's kind of there together.
Yep, that's spot on.
Um, but just I wish I could remember just some of the missions in Baqubah, uh, you know, of how crazy some of them are and how we lived out there. I told people sometimes you wouldn't shower for 2 weeks. They're like, what? Like, I said sometimes you got to shower every night, but sometimes you know, your clothes felt like they were dry cleaned because they were so hard from all the,
All the sweat, got the white stains.
yeah.
And that's one of those other subjects. It's hard to talk with someone who isn't a veteran or who was not in the same stuff that you were in, because you could say, "Oh yeah, my uniform was like that," and they just look at you and are like, "Uh huh, uh huh." They don't get what it really the
Yeah.
smell.
Yeah. I do remember, and it kind of bothered me, but it kind of didn't because regulations are regulations. And you gotta draw the line somewhere. But I remember sometimes guys coming in, and we would come in straight from being out for days, if not maybe a week, and go into the chow hall, and guys probably looked like hell, and they probably did, and them getting a mouthful from somebody on the fob or something about what they look like, and I was just like, are you serious? But I get it, you know. Um, Somebody's got to be there to uphold the standard, and
Yeah, but there's like you said, time and place. Time and
yeah,
place for the hard nose or the hard ass. Let's
yeah,
just take a deep breath, let the trigger pullers get a little food, and let them get about their day. It's not this hard.
yeah. I think different folks have handled this in different ways, and I don't know how much I can talk about this, but some folks maybe steer to other means to cope. Maybe some folks have dealt with it healthier than others. And it's just, I think it's personality. It's so many factors that maybe lead to how we handle this. I feel like I've handled it by staying busy. I think that's kind of my coping is hobbies or busyness or, doing stuff. Um, and I would say what I feel like I'm most proud of, and I can only speak to my platoon and I would think BCO in general, but I feel like we did it the right way. Did we make mistakes? I'm sure there was some mistakes made. We all do, but I feel like we did it the right way, and we treated people, or at least that was my goal, and what influence I could have as PL. I said we're gonna treat people, if we don't know that they're bad, you're not gonna go in there and just completely turn over somebody's family, and and that's hard when you're dealing with young folks that have just lost a friend and emotions are running high. You're having to control or try to control these emotions of people. You're pissed off, you're mad. Um, and I feel like the one thing that I can say is I feel like we did it right. And, when it was time to pull the trigger and it was time to get on somebody's ass, we got on it. But if it wasn't, you know, I feel like I don't have any regrets looking back that we did something that we shouldn't have.
That's awesome. And that speaks highly of your leadership.
Yeah. And I just think we had good people. Um, Again, but I had some turnover as we all do. But we had good people. Oh, I don't know. I don't know how much time you got, and I can do this really quick, but has anybody talked about the air assault?
Which one? Oh,
Well, well,
just roll with it.
well, I don't remember when it was, but one memory I have from Warhorse was we made history. You know, we did the Stryker Brigade did the first. Well, it was the first ever air assault for a Stryker Brigade. So I don't know what it was. Some area they wanted to hit, and it was not safe. It was a black route. It was not safe to drive. So we got in Chinooks and did this big plan, and had I think some Fox folks with us. I had some news folks. And that experience, I can still smell the smells. I can still see the night vision green. I can still feel the hot wind. But going in, and doing that as a pretty large mission, I don't know that we accomplished much by grabbing anybody, but maybe we accomplished something by keeping them on their toes.
Yeah. One of the things about the U.S. military is force projection. And that's the big thing again now. But to be able to pick up a Stryker Brigade, even if it's dismounted, but take them, drop them off, surround the enemy, do what you gotta do, and then pick them up. Usually just
Yeah. Yeah, that was a cool experience. But yeah, I have some I have some regret of not being a part of Arrowhead Ripper, but I kind of don't in the same token. I regret not being there with our guys, but they didn't need me. By that time, they were, they got another PL. They were experienced. Those guys had more than enough experience. I just wanted to be there with them. But we got to have plenty of experiences together over that deployment. We got plenty of alone time together.
you have great talks on in the Stryker.
Oh yeah.
Who doesn't want to be with the troops? I mean, if you don't want to be with your troops, I probably question you as a leader.
Hmm.
But you were physically unable to. But if you were physically able to, you want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. It's the time in the army and the military, specifically deployment time frame, just you know, I was a good kid. I was pretty immature as far as life experiences, and so to be thrown right into that, it just really matured me a lot. It gave me a lot of, I think, how it influenced me or changed me. I feel like I don't understand sometimes when, I'm not saying I don't get overwhelmed and stressed, but I always feel like now I have an ability to take whatever may come and deal with it. Now, dealing with it may not always be perfect or in the right way, but I am able to deal with it and be adaptable and figure it out. And I feel like you know, that's one of the biggest things, losing somebody or going through hard times. I don't think you're really ever prepared for that or get used to that. I just that I don't think that happens. Um, but it does change who you are as far as being able to at least figure it out and try to move on.
Yeah. Life changes after you almost die.
Yeah.
So, things you should deal with in life right now. You could definitely relate back to those days and be like, oh, this is easy. Might be uncomfortable, but it's not. I haven't showered in 2 weeks. I haven't slept for, 48 hours, and no one is trying to kill me.
Yeah.
I can make it through this.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always wondered, will it ever be a day or time where World War II Vietnam folks can go back and visit areas? And I guess you should never say never, but I just don't see Iraq being one of those. I don't think I'll ever go walk the streets of Mosul or Baghdad or specifically Baqubah and say, this is where some of this stuff happened. And I could be completely wrong, but I just don't think that that will happen.
Yeah, and that's tough. That's something that we're kind of working on. And I know I didn't really introduce myself very well or tell you what I've been doing or what I do. But after I retired, I became a mental health clinician.
I lost you. There you go. I got you again.
No, I was just talking about closure. And for so many of the OEF veterans, there isn't really a closure. And like what you're talking about, there isn't the go visit Normandy, visit the beach where you stormed for our generation.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see how that is closure. You mentioned the smells and the different thing that can bring back, certain memories. Um, Being in a location, and I'm sure it looks totally different in ways and stuff over there now, but I think just going back and visiting, I thought about that shortly after getting out. That's something I've thought about for a long time. Of, will it ever be a day where you can walk downtown Baghdad along is that the Tigris, Euphrates? I don't remember, but um, along the river and be like, this is like a city, like without without feeling endangered or threatened in some way.
That's a great question. Maybe one day we can. But that's also part of that this project is working on. And that is, oh, we got really loud there. But no, we just want to help with some of that closure. And the the like end of the series is hopefully going to be able to show some videos. You remember Sergeant Major Huckins? You're Sergeant Major, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
520?
Yeah.
Uh, Apparently, he went back in 2010 or 2012, and he was just talking about how Baqubah is a real city.
Wow.
So yeah, so hopefully we could put a lot of that together, throw it in this documentary, or whatever the end state is, and people can see that, and hopefully we can help with the subject of closure.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was going back through. I mean, I did it really quick prior to starting, but I had files from like my S1 days of like awards, and I found some pictures. I really don't have. I really wish, this is pre GoPro days, and the days of videos and pictures during combat or firefights or engagements or whatever. It's just didn't really happen then. But what pictures and videos we do have are special.
Yeah. Uh, I believe in that trend. I see it making it around on social media every so often, but take more pictures.
Hmm.
And even today as a civilian, take more pictures. But yeah, that's been it. Having those pictures of the boys back then, of your platoon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think this is good. I want to do everything that I can to help the broader Debrief project. So I'm talking to Jim and others, then if I can do any type of fundraising, golf tournament, 5Ks, other things to help try to raise money, just understanding how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, not to hijack closing this thing out, but for the fundraising aspect, yeah, man. If Jen can't help you, let me know. But I know he's really good at what he's doing. I used to put on 5Ks. I've got a little experience with golf tournaments, but yeah, fundraising is key. And one part is for the documentary itself, but then the other is the longevity of the Debrief project. Because there's always generations. Actually, we're starting to call them battle cohorts. So these groups that we're going to work with. So there's a long-term plan. But as I tell everybody, the next shooting war is only moments away. So if we can help, there's so many gaps that the VA, other charities. So there's room for us. There's room for sharing. Hopefully this was a positive experience for you. But you get a lot of people who are like, I feel better for talking. I feel better for talking to another veteran.
Yeah,
So,
I do. I think it's good to talk about it. And I'm one of those where a couple of days where like, man, now I remember that story, and now I remember that story, and there's only so much time and things you can go into. But what that does is it's not just, I think, the time right this second, but the things that may help. Because I told somebody, I was like, look, that's a time that, not that I want to put it behind me, but a lot of life has happened in between that. And some of those memories I want to put behind me, you know? But I think it's healthy to, be able to, because what happens when my son, or if I ever have grandkids, if they want to ever understand, I don't want to be like, oh, well, I don't remember that. Like, I think there's health to trying to retain that and trying to, in a healthy way, remember those.
yeah, got to capture the history, capture the story. He was one of the commanders during Baqubah, and he became a mentor, a friend over the years. So I give him his credit because it's something he said. But Sheldon Morris, he always said, "Tell your story." And it was I was talking to, okay. Oh, but anyways, he told me, take the pictures, tell your story, capture your unit history, because people will want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that relates totally to what we're doing here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure that you have other things to do, and how quickly has time gone by? Yeah. My kind of closing, I would say, is that what I was saying about that I just feel good about the way that we did it and the time that's what gives me closure. We can't control what experiences we ended up having, but I feel like we can control. And as immature as I was then, I was mature enough to know that one day I will be older, and I want to be able to look back and say, we're in a tough position, but we want to try to do this as well, as good as we can in the right way.